If you have questions after this session, please email newengland@mhttcnetwork.org. Next slide, please. So this is just an MHTTC acknowledgement. Next slide, please. The MHTTC network uses affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all activities. That language is strengths-based and hopeful, inclusive and accepting of diverse cultures, genders, perspectives, and experiences, healing-centered and trauma-responsive, inviting to individuals participating in their own journeys, person-first and free of labels, non-judgmental and avoiding assumptions, respectful, clear and understandable, and consistent with our actions, policies, and products. So with that, I'll hand it over to Kim and Susan for their presentation.
I would like to introduce Kim and Susan. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Macheri Keshavan from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Boston, Massachusetts. It's my pleasure to introduce the speakers of today, Dr. Kim Muser and Dr. Susan McGurk, for their presentation on exercise and the benefits of exercise and on mental health and cognition. So this event is part of our series focused on mental health self-care during the COVID-19 pandemic for healthcare workers and first responders. As you all know, the pandemic has been going on for over 2.5 years now, and we have all been impacted from the pandemic in one way or the other. And it is very clear that there are major consequences of the pandemic on mental health, not only of people who suffer from the illness, but also those who provide care, including healthcare workers and first responders. So there is increasing evidence that exercise has numerous benefits beyond improving physical health, including enhancing cognition and well-being, and also improving resilience in response to stress. So as a part of this series, we have had a number of related topics, including yoga, music, art, positive thinking, mindfulness, spirituality, and so forth, as tools for resilience building. And this next, the one that you're going to hear today on exercise, is exactly in that series and will provide you all with both the science and the art of learning to use exercise towards positive mental health benefit. All of us, especially the couch potatoes among us, will benefit from this. So with that as the introduction, let me pass it on to Kim Muser and Susan McGurk. So Susan, you're going to go first.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ted. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about exercise and some of the benefits of exercise. And then Kim is going to focus on how to get going and maintain exercise in our daily lives. So when we refer to exercise, we mean activity requiring physical effort carried out to sustain or improve health and fitness. So the benefits of exercise are certainly accumulating and include improvements in depression, anxiety, including panic disorder, increased sleep efficiency and quality, improved cognitive functioning, and increased physical health. And this includes in people who are healthy and people who have a variety of physical conditions, including Parkinson's disease and cancer, and people with cognitive conditions such as Alzheimer's disease. So there's plenty of research demonstrating these benefits. This study is this is one example of a meta-analysis for people with major depression. And the intervention included a variety of types of exercise from 2 to 4 times a week with a duration of 20 to 45 minutes per session. And in the analysis, some of the studies had an unspecified amount of intensity up to 85% of the maximum heart rate. And the effects were significant on MDD for this amount of exercise. With an effect size of close to 1.5, which is a very good effect size. I wanted to thank Michael Otto too for some of these slides, and Kim Willis as well. He's a professor in the Department of Psychology who specializes in exercise and mood. There's a very recent meta-analysis of physical activity and depression. And this particular meta-analysis is really impressive in that it only included studies that had a minimum of 3,000 subjects to avoid any biases from small samples, and a minimum follow-up period of 8.5 years. So in this meta-analysis includes about 200,000 people. What it showed in these studies, and these are any people over the age of 18, is that accumulating an activity volume equivalent to 2.5 hours of brisk walking per week was associated with a 25% lowered risk of depression. So their outcomes, they were looking at symptoms of depression, diagnosis of depression, and risk for developing depression. And half that dose of exercise, the risk for developing depression was 18% lower compared with no activity. So one additional, I think, very interesting finding is that higher volumes of exercise did not necessarily yield obvious benefits. So, and the strongest benefits were demonstrated in, as Kesh had mentioned, the couch potatoes are people who started at no activity and increased their activity to some minimum amount showed the greatest diminished risk for depression. So we don't have to get out there and run a marathon at 10-minute miles to pace to achieve benefits of exercise. So mental health benefits of physical exercise, even at levels below public health recommendations, which I'll mention in a minute, have significant benefits for either diminishing depression or avoiding it altogether. And yeah, same thing for anxiety. So this meta-analysis included 49 randomized controlled trials, and the frequency of exercise varied from one acute bout per week to 5 times a week, with a duration of 30 to 90 minutes per exercise session. And the intensity was pretty high from moderate to vigorous, and I'll define this in a minute. And that effect size was median about 0.5. So again, exercise can be a prescription for anxiety. Similarly, another meta-analysis showed that exercise can improve the quality and efficiency of sleep. Regular exercise was shown to have a small beneficial effect on total sleep time and efficiency, a small to medium benefit on sleep onset latency, which is a problem for some people, and moderate beneficial effects on sleep quality. So not surprisingly, exercise is increasingly becoming a recommended treatment for psychiatric and physical health conditions. And preventative effects of exercise are recognized by insurance companies who will often reimburse the cost of going to a gym, joining a gym, or taking classes. So the World Health Organization And as well as the American Heart Association advises 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate intensity activities, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity activity again per week. So one common metric of physical activity is a MET, or the metabolic equivalent of task or type of exercise, bicycling or running. So the resting metabolic rate is considered to be 1 MET. And 4 METs is 4 times the energy of sitting still. So to give you an example. So a sedentary lifestyle or sedentary activity uses 1.5 or fewer METs. And examples are sitting or lying down. Light intensity exercises use from 1.6 to 3 METs. Examples are walking at a leisurely pace or standing in the line at the store. Moderate intensity uses from 3 to 6 METs, and examples are walking briskly, vacuuming, or raking leaves. So it gives you an idea of what we do on a daily basis, how that accumulates METs. And then vigorous intensity activities use 6 or more METs. So examples are fast walking, running, aerobics classes, or shoveling snow. Something that we're familiar with here in the Northeast. So here are other examples, and there are references on the side so you can find more information about METs and activities. So again, light activities involve sitting at your desk, playing cards, standing at a desk, that's a little better than sitting, washing dishes, yoga, or fishing. These are light intensity activities. Moderate include housework, weight training, golf, walking fast, weight training, yard work, swimming. These are moderate intensity exercises. And vigorous include all those things that make you sweat. Walking really fast, biking, circuit training, singles tennis, shoveling, digging ditches, competitive soccer, and running. So just to give you a little background about the MET, so it's approximately 1 MET is, and this is for the exercise physiologists in the group. One MET is approximately 3.5 milliliters of oxygen consumed per kilogram of body weight per minute. So let's say a person weighs 160 pounds or 73 kilograms, and you play singles tennis, which has a MET value of 8, which I think is on here. Or we mentioned that. Yeah, singles tennis, MET of 8. The formula for determining how many calories you're burning is the 8, which is the MET for tennis, times 3.5 times your weight in kilograms, in this case 73, divided by 200. And that comes to 10 calories per minute. So if you play an hour of tennis, it's you can burn up to 613 calories. Now, again, this depends on people's weight and obviously their physical shape, but that's an approximate calorie assessment of a MET. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim, who will talk a little bit about understanding motivation and how to use it for exercise.
Hi, everybody. So what is motivation? And to address this, we need to talk about motivation for what? We can talk about motivation as an outcome, like losing some weight. We can also talk about motivation as a process or the effort to get there. And we know that often the process is as important or even more important than the outcome. So there is a linkage between exercise and mood. And that's different from the linkage between exercise and health. It takes quite a while to get the health benefits of exercise, whereas the mood benefits are pretty much immediate. So one of the tricks is motivating yourself to get into the habit of exercising in order to get that mood boost with the recognition that health benefits will follow down the road. This is just some evidence showing the immediate benefits of mood in people with a major depressive episode following exercise. And what you can see is that there are pretty significant benefits experienced 5 minutes after finishing exercise, 30 minutes, and 60 minutes after. So let's talk a little bit about what motivation is and is not. First of all, to talk about what it is not, motivation is not a fixed internal quality. There are many cultural norms about motivation, such as it being an inward or an interior reservoir. And you can think of a level of motivation as if it were a tank that was either full or empty. Or people can sometimes think about waiting for motivation as though we're annoyingly late, like the 3:15 train. Or sometimes people may refer to digging deep to find motivation, like drilling for a new well and hoping for a gusher. You'll notice that what's consistent in all of these is that there's often a quality of waiting for it to come. Is to go back to William Miller, the creator, along with Rolnick, of motivational interviewing. And what Miller says is motivation to be understood not as something that someone has, but as something that someone does. It involves recognizing a problem, could also be a goal, searching for a way to change, and then beginning and sticking with that change strategy. So Miller is really all in favor of dispensing with the concept of motivation, and really talking about how can we get ourselves to change our behavior. That's really how motivation ends up being defined. It can be helpful to think of motivation in terms of competing motivations. So we have motivation to watch TV, motivation to chat with a friend, play with a game, to work out. And really what you're trying to do is not so much build motivation as trying to modify the hierarchy of motivations to do different kinds of things in order to get exercise higher up on that hierarchy. So there's different ways of programming motivation for exercise. And you can think in terms of intervening at every stage of exercise. At the pre-exercise stage, we'll go through some of these, during exercise and following exercise. So let's talk about these. So you can use your environment as well as self-talk to manipulate your hierarchy of motivation. So an example is many efforts associated with training. So training is where you have small successive steps towards a particular skill, each reinforced. It's a little bit like shaping. So here we see the person on the couch, and well, let me get dressed for exercise. And well, now that I'm dressed, maybe I can get a foot out the door. And then once you're outside, well, now that I'm outside, I think I'm going to go for a walk around the block. And so the idea is by chaining a series of behaviors together and doing them again and again, one gets associated with the next behavior, and there's a smaller increment or amount of effort necessary to initiate the chain of events. So let's talk about other ways of manipulating motivation. When possible, it can be useful to combine motivations. Here's an example of one person combining motivation. She says, I value my reading time, and therefore I will only read when I run. Here's somebody who limits reading, or perhaps limits listening of audiobooks to times when and then there's cognitive coaching, addressing your own negative thinking. Now, goal contagion, this is the goal in a way, because goal contagion is when other people's goals actually influence your goals, and that can include goals related to exercise, even before you necessarily conceptualize it as a goal. So what are the things that you can say to make that work? I want to feel fit like that, or I bet they're having a good time, maybe I should go run, as opposed to, well, I will never look like that, or I'm so out of shape, it would be embarrassing if I ran in public. So here's examples of positive coaching versus negative self-talk to help get you going. Here's another example: preparing for morning exercise. Examples of negative thoughts: it's too cold to get out of bed. It may be more valuable for my mood to sleep in. Missing my workout this one time won't matter. I'm too tired to exercise well. And the more adaptive thought: don't let the sleep mind trump an awake mind's decision. Another way of facilitating the decision to follow through on exercise is building in a social component to exercise. Scheduling exercise with others can increase the chances of following through on plans for exercising. First, there's the desire to avoid disappointing the other person by not showing up. There's a kind of a felt obligation to join in when one decides to do at least some exercise with others. The socialization before, during, and after the exercise is often very reinforcing. And there's also potential opportunities for even bigger social events related to the activity. So, for example, a person may go running with some friends once a week or twice a week, but then there's the opportunity to participate in a race or go on a group hike. Doing exercise with other people can also provide distraction from some of the discomforts associated with strenuous exercise, as well as a sense of not being alone with having to endure it. Of course, not all exercise needs to be with others, but by regularly scheduling some exercise with others, it can boost motivation and follow through. Let's talk about intervention during the exercise. One of the things that's interesting is that we know that the worse people feel when they're beginning to get in shape and when they are beginning to exercise, the less likely it is that they're going to continue exercising 6 months and a year later. What this graph shows, there's two line graphs, and it is on scale. On the y-axis is the number of minutes that they exercise over a period of time, over the past weeks, and then on the x-axis is how the person feels during exercising earlier on. And what you can see is that the people who have negative feelings during early bouts of exercise were much less likely or engaged in much less exercise 6 months later and 12 months later than the people who felt better during exercise. So attending to the feelings early on during exercise, as well as setting realistic and positive expectations for how you're going to feel, could be important. So why do people sometimes feel bad during exercise? Well, sometimes intensity is too high, and there can also be discomfort associated with the physical exertion. People who are high in anxiety sensitivity may be very sensitive to the increased rate of their heart beating and things like that, and may have negative self-thoughts about straining themselves too much. Also, people with social physique anxiety may have a lot of anxiety about their own body as compared to other people. And of course, that is heightened when you are exercising with other people. And so this is a graph that shows that the intensity increases the that the intensity of exercise is associated with increases in feelings, negative feelings, and that this is exaggerated or grows very for people who are overweight or who are obese. So it becomes very important to monitor the level of effort that goes to exercise early on, so as to not make it overly strenuous or overly unpleasant, and certainly so as to not make it more unpleasant than what the person is actually expecting it to be like. And we've already talked about social physique, anxiety, and anxiety sensitivity. Being aware of these factors can be useful because, first of all, with anxiety sensitivity, you can be aware of what are the autonomic signs of arousal that are associated with exercise and learn to anticipate them. And for social physique anxiety, you can work on challenging some of the beliefs that people have in terms of their bodies, other bodies, the importance of that, as well as doing more exercise on their own earlier on to become more comfortable. So this is about managing the adverse aspects of exercise, cognitive coaching, and so on. So some other strategies for making exercise reward is to try to enhance well-being around exercise through doing things such as play, incorporating play into exercise, increasing the positive, so having a social event, going to an event related to the exercise could be ways of accentuating the positives. Exercising mindfulness, getting a sense of the breeze when one is running, noticing colors. Sometimes listening to music is a form of mindfulness that people may enjoy when they exercise. Feeling well, tuning into that feeling of wellness that occurs anywhere from the 5 minutes following exercise to an hour later, and really tuning into that and enjoying that can be a way of accentuating that. And we know that there are effects in terms of recency effects. So something that was difficult at the time, but then after the difficulty is over, it's pleasant to enjoy that relief from it and the looking back on it. That recency effect can actually reinforce the activity and get the person doing it again. But what you want to do is really tune into it and enjoy that. And then there's memory effects. You can call the exercise to mind when you're not exercising and enjoy the difference between what it felt like then and what it feels like now when you're not exercising. So that's an important thing, is keeping exercise fun and being able to play. And then there's intervening post-exercise. So there's the rehearsal benefit. So positive self-talk, like, wow, I did it, or that was hard, but I feel good now. And I have to remember how good I feel now. So this all has to do with the rehearsal benefit. You can actually increase the reinforcement value of having done something by delving into it, focusing on it, not just letting it pass, but making it an actual focus of attention. And then echoing. This can go on hours after exercise. It's one of the advantages of exercising in the morning is that you have that kind of echoing effect throughout the day. Well, you know, I got my run in, I got my workout in, and how many other people did that? I hear I am meeting with 5 other people, and I've already gotten my workout in. So that could become another way of echoing the achievement. And another thing that can be done, this is post-exercise, that can enhance the enjoyment of it, is to become an experimentalist and to record information about the nature of the exercise. It could include things such as how far you ran or how long you worked out. It could include sort of feeling statements about how you felt about it. If you're concerned about things like the amount of sleep you get or something like that, you might start recording the amount of sleep as well, along with other aspects of the exercise itself. And so you become your own little scientist in terms of understanding the effects of exercise better, as well as if you're trying to use exercise for other particular ends, such as improving sleep or feeling better about yourself at other times, trying to record those things as well. So what you're trying to do with all these things before the exercise, during the exercise, after the exercise, is to create a positive cycle. So enhancing motivation to exercise, or dealing with the hierarchy of motivation. So trying to get exercise up there in that hierarchy, going to the exercise, ending well, boosting mood, rehearsing the benefit, and imagining yourself working out. This is all part of this ongoing cycle. So having talked about all that, what I wanted to do now is to talk a little bit about exercise in my life, and to give a very concrete example of it, and to kind of talk about what works for me. And then Susan's going to do a little bit of the same. So my background is I ran cross country for 3 years in high school. I was hopelessly mediocre, so I was always kind of right in the middle of the pack. I did lots of hiking and skiing throughout grade school and high school, and a little bit through college. College in 1974 to 78. And then I got my first regular job, and I would do occasional hikes and ski trips in graduate school and throughout my first job in Philadelphia. Graduate school was 1978 to 1984, and my first job in Philadelphia was 1984 to 1990. During that time, during my first job in Philadelphia, I did make 3 attempts to get into running shape. but none of them lasted more than 6 weeks. So you could say, you know, a month is pretty close to what it takes to get in good enough running shape. And so I did get in shape a couple of times, but I was not able to sustain it. And I did find myself falling further and further behind my kids when we would go hiking. And so when I went to my second job, which was at Dartmouth, I took a job at the Dartmouth Psychiatric Research Center, which was headquartered in Concord, New Hampshire, on the grounds of the former state hospital. Part of the grounds are still used as part of the state hospital, and had the convenience of the research offices that we worked in had a shower around the corner that was easily accessible. And there was a group of people who would go running around lunchtime, anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 people, and they would go running anywhere from 3 to 5 miles. And so I found that I could join these people. A few of them felt sympathetic enough of my plight and being out of shape that they didn't run too far ahead of me. And so in a matter of a couple of months, I actually got into shape running with this group of people during lunchtime 3 or 4 times a week. And then I began doing some running over the weekends on my own. And then I began entering some local races. And I continued running when I moved to Boston for my third job, which was in 2011. And I actually continued to run pretty consistently ever since. I enter occasional races. In the pre-COVID time, in the summer, we would do a race every 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes several weeks in a row. A little bit less common now during COVID. But we would typically run 5K or 10K races or a 5-miler. And occasionally we have run a number of half marathons. And since moving to Maine, for the most part, I'm back and forth between Maine and Boston, but for the most part, we've been in Maine since the beginning of COVID. I've switched out running on roads with mostly trail running. There's lots of woods around here in Maine. So my long-standing running goals, by long-standing, I mean these are goals that I've had associated with running, and I've simply maintained these goals for the most part, are first of all to run at least 4 times a week. And when I go running, typically I'm going for usually at least 30 or 40 minutes, sometimes an hour, or sometimes more than that. But my goal is to run 4 times a week. And then my second goal is to try to run 20 miles a week. Now, most of the time, I actually do meet the first goal of running 4 times a week, but usually I am not meeting the second goal of running 20 miles a week. I'm usually running less mileage for reasons I will shortly explain. And what my current routine is that we have a dog named Venus. You'll see her shortly. And I go out for a run every day with her in the woods for about 45 minutes. Some of the time includes her stopping to sniff or pee and things like that. And we kind of reach a compromise. If she stops too much, I make her run with me. I have her on a leash, but I'm happy to let her stop. And we go rain or shine, snow or sun, doesn't matter what the weather is. And that has been a little bit of a change in my running routine for me, because until then, I used to go out for kind of very slow, relaxed, meditative jog, very enjoyable, taking in all of the scenes and things like that. And now I'm running a little bit frantically with a lot of speed work, trying to keep up with my dog, interspersed with stops and trying not to run into her when she stops right in front of me. So it's become a form of agility training. For people who are familiar with running, you may know that one of the ways of actually getting faster is doing interval training. And interval training is when you run really fast and then you take a breath to jog and just stop, catch your breath, and then you run really fast again. So my training schedule has changed from what used to be called LSD, long, slow distance, to interval workouts. And so even though I'm running fewer miles, it turns out I'm about in the same shape as I was before. And so I schedule an hour a day between Zoom calls to go out for a run, which gives me 45 minutes, and I can get in and out of the shower for in 15 minutes. I do occasional runs on my own over the weekend. In the summer, after I finish a run, I go and jump in the cove. We live on the cove here in Maine, or sometimes in the local lake. As I said, I run in rain or snow. When the paths are really icy out there, I wear yak tracks, to kind of like elongated cleats. And I kind of mentioned this change in my running routine, so I have a little duplicate information here. I sometimes do runs with family members or friends, and we do races around monthly or a little bit more often. Whenever I do a run, I record the number of miles I've run. I have a Nike app, it's free, and there's a whole bevy of Nike coaches who are giving me encouraging messages about my efforts out there on the trail every day. And every week I add up my miles, and every year I add up the number of miles I ran. And if I had been a little bit more organized, I actually would have given a chart of the number of miles I've run every year for the last, say, 15 years. Generally, it's somewhere between around 650 and around 800 or 900, something like that. And I mentioned that I have my Nike coach provides encouraging words about every workout I do. Even if I go out for 0.1 mile, I sometimes get an encouraging word from them. Makes me think maybe they're not really paying as much attention to me as I think they should be. And then last, my most recent accomplishment is I organized a 10K race through the trails around our house in Maine for a family reunion that we had over the 4th of July. And then Venus in one of our snows last winter. And then here is me and Venus. We're both a little bit elongated, some of the funny pictures here. And then this here is a picture of Susan, Venus, and I finishing a race. Generally speaking, who's ever out in front gets to take Venus on the race. It's a little bit of their penalty or handicap, as it were. And so Venus is almost invariably finishing way ahead of me with Susan. But we're talking about maybe changing that up. So that's a little bit about what works for me. And now what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Susan, who can talk about what works for her.
Thanks, Kim. And I do look forward to hearing via the chat what works for other people. I do want to go back and just say a word about cognition and exercise, which I mentioned in the beginning. Of course, exercise favorably affects cognition, and pretty much across the board. And it has its greatest effect on people who have impairments, such as people with early Alzheimer's, for example, or Parkinson's disease. But healthy adults do benefit from cognitively from regular exercise. And there's a meta-analysis which I will include in our slide set for you to have, which involves 29 studies by Smith et al. In 2010. And the control group was weightless or stretching, etc. And there is some indication that other activities like Tai Chi or yoga can improve cognition, but nothing improves it as much as aerobic exercise, which produces the strongest effects. Some studies show promotes neurogenesis, possibly through release of BDNF. But remember that exercise improves sleep and mood, and that can have a positive effect on cognitive function as well. So I really thank everyone for tolerating this. I went through a period where I wanted to change my weight, and I really didn't have a specific weight in mind. I just decided I didn't like the weight I was. So I did everything without reading how to do it, but it turned out it was everything I learned in home economics in 7th grade, which is, this is your back of your fist is the size of, you should get protein, count, log, track, and eventually became a habit. Changing my eating habit became a habit. Sorry, changing my eating became a habit, so I didn't have to track. And exercising, and I started to increase exercising, and I didn't have a goal for that either. I always liked running, so I started running, And learning, as it turns out, you have the biggest bang for your buck in terms of METs or calories or your heart rate. It's the most efficient exercise for burning calories. So I started running and I started increasing my length of my runs, and I included hills, which I think was very important for me. And then I started entering Kim and I in races, and longer races, and my longest was a half. And I really wasn't sure where I was going with it until I ran the half, and I realized that was it. That was going to be my longest run, and I backed off of that since then. Yeah, so my primary motivation now in sustaining my exercise is so I can include more candy in my diet, and that's the truth. Despite all the other beautiful benefits of exercise, I have a sweet tooth. So for my own suggestions for working out, Cash mentioned the pandemic, and maybe everybody learned a little bit about what they need to sustain or initiate or sustain an exercise program. I lost my in-person classes, and that took a big hit on my, at least my core exercising. I like.
So Susan, can you increase the volume on your computer a little bit, please?
Yeah. Okay, is this better, Cash?
It's a little better now, yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
coming closer to
I'm
the
getting a little- That's so funny. I'm leaning very close to the computer. Yeah, so I like people who count down out loud, so I know how long I have to have pain, because pain is more bearable when it's timed. Morning workouts for me work out best before my body figures out what I'm planning to do with it. And Kim mentioned that on this one slide about messages you can give yourself about working out. When I'm waking up for a class and I don't feel like going, I think about how much money I'm going to lose if I don't go. And I also remind myself that I never regret going, even when I don't feel like it. But I always regret not going. And I really like the competition and races because it forces me to push myself. So let me go back to our summary. And significant mental health and other benefits of being active. And this association is found even at physical activity levels that are below the public health recommendations. So thanks very much. And we look forward to any questions or comments.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Kim and Susan, for presenting. If people have questions, you can drop them in the chat or use the hand raising function on Zoom. I'll be posting a post-event survey link in the chat box right now, and you'll also be receiving it over email, so please fill that out once this is done. Thank you.
Yeah, while we are waiting for other questions, Kim and Susan, the one thing I forgot to do at the beginning is to introduce the two of you about you to the audience. So what I want to say briefly is Kim Muser is a professor of occupational therapy, psychological and brain sciences and psychiatry at the Boston University, and also a researcher at the Psychiatric Rehab Center at BU. And his work has been across a large landscape of psychiatry, including various psychosocial treatments and self-management, illness management, and supported employment and cognitive rehabilitation, and as well as social skills training for serious mental illness. He's published over 400 papers and co-authored over 10 books. And his research has been supported by the National Institute of Mental Health and the National Institute of Drug Abuse and SAMS and PCORI, as well as the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation. He has received several awards, including the Michael Neal Award by the American Psychological Association. And Susan McGurk is a neuropsychologist and a clinical psychologist, and also a professor of occupational therapy and psychological and brain sciences in Boston University. And her work has also been in the area of cognitive remediation, rehabilitation of individuals with schizophrenia and other serious mental illness. She has published over 100 papers, and her work has been supported by the NIMH, National Institute of Disability, the Brain Behavior Research Foundation. She has received a number of awards, including the Jerry Hogarty Excellence in Research from the University of Pittsburgh. So while we are still waiting for other questions, I have one question to both of you. What do you think of as the side effects of exercise? Can you comment on that? You know, I think about it quite a bit, you know, and there are the orthopedic issues and musculoskeletal issues and so forth. How does one strike a balance between the beneficial effects and the side effects? Yes.
Well, I'll make a couple of comments. First of all, I think one can engage in a little bit of cognitive restructuring or thinking about things differently, because if you exercise and you do a hard exercise, you can feel sore, and you can interpret that soreness as unpleasant or something that you wish that you didn't have, or what you could do is you can interpret it as a sign of having done a good workout. And so I do think that the regular kind of aches and pains associated with getting in shape can certainly be reconceptualized to actually be positive indicators that you had a good workout. In terms of the other things, you know, it certainly is possible to have sprains. The few times I've been off of running for a month or two have been because of a severe sprain. My understanding is that the research literature does not point to fairly moderate levels of running, kind of running that I do, as having significant effects in terms of wearing down your joints and things like that. And so my experience with it has been that there are not that many downsides or side effects of exercise. Susan may be able to comment on this differently, because she has had some physical things that she's needed to deal with, but that were not necessarily the cause of running. What would be your comments about Kesh's question about side effects of running?
Well, I developed arthritis in my hip. And David asked about, what do you do about an injury? I mean, injuries are the bane of athletes and for the rest of us too. So I had to switch to biking after my hip replacement, and I hated it. I hate biking. So I really had to force myself to get on the bike and do it. So I enjoy running, and it's an interesting question, Cash, about the side effects. I like running, and I feel good when I finished a good run. I can work out problems when I'm running. I tend not to listen to music. I don't need that. I do most of my exercise outside when I can. So it's kind of a quiet moment. And a number of people asked about a dog. Quentin Foster said his dog is extremely motivating. He walks his dog 3 times more now that he has a dog before he got her.
Tell them the German rules.
Oh, and there are German rules in Germany. I don't know if anyone has, I don't know if it's a law or a guideline,
But if you own a dog and live in Germany, you have to take it outside a minimum of 2 hours a day. And I imagine that's because people were leaving their dogs in their apartment and maybe bothering the neighbors, or other neighbors were offended by not taking a dog out. So we follow that with our dog, not that we have any choice. She wouldn't tolerate.
But she is an important motivating factor to get out.
Oh, absolutely. You have to, if you have a dog, you have to take the dog out. So you have to at least go outside 3 times a day for the dog's sake. A lot of people are writing about dogs. Kimberly, I would highly recommend getting a shelter dog. That's where we got all of our dogs. And they've all been involved in our exercise routines.
There's one question about how we can motivate kids and teenagers to exercise.
Oh, I don't have personal experience with that. You do.
I think there's a couple of ways of motivating kids. One is planning family activities that involve some exercise. So I grew up in a family where we would go hiking pretty regularly. And while hiking is not a daily kind of a thing, it gets you out for extended periods of time in the woods, and I think gives people an appreciation for effort and kind of reaping the rewards of effort. The other thing I think is engaging in certain sports kind of things. Of course, there are a zillion sports leagues, soccer leagues, and things like that. There may be other kinds of family outings. I grew up in a family where from the ages of 5 to 18, we went skiing every weekend. We rented literally a 1-bedroom apartment with 3 boys at a local state-run ski area, and skied every weekend and the winter vacation. So getting about 30 days a year. And that was kind of a very good activity because there was some exercise in it, but you're out there on the slopes, and so you're not in each other's faces and the like. And so it was another example of kind of a shared activity that family members can do to get the outdoors, get kids involved in the outdoors, interested in different kinds of exercise and sport.
That's wonderful. Let me ask something that is slightly related to side effects, and that is when people who are regular joggers or regular exercisers, if they stop exercising, could the opposite of a mood boost happen? Namely, could it take someone into depression when you stop running?
Well, I think we could give both answers to that question. I'll give my answer first, which is I've never actually experienced much of a depression from not running. And in fact, I had a slide that somehow got taken out, and I talked about there being 2 kinds of runner highs. Some people feel high when they're actually running, which is not very many people, and certainly not me. But then everybody feels high when they stop running. That's the real runner's high, and so to me that is something that has always worked for me. But I have not experienced a kind of a kind of a dysphoria. But I think Susan has told me that you have experienced a bit of that. So what's it like for you if you're not able to get your run or your exercise in?
Yeah, it's a problem, and it does affect my mood if I don't work out as regularly as I think I should. And I have an easier time in Boston because I belong to 2 different gyms, and I really enjoy that. I run a 1.5 miles to get there, and then I do a class. So I don't have that level of motivation in Maine. If it's okay, Kesh, can I ask one of the questions that Ken Farbstein asked? Should doctors routinely prescribe get a dog to couch potato clients, especially those who have lots of negative symptoms like apathy?
Yes, please.
I think it's a great idea. It has to be done with some degree of caution that the person will be able to rise to the challenge. But I think if somebody is open to it, I think it's a good thing. One of dogs are a little bit like kids in that they take the focus off of oneself, which can really have its benefits, both in terms of exercising and in terms of getting a break from the self-critical minds that many of us tend to have. So I do think exercise should be prescribed more often, and dogs.
And dogs.
Well, you might get an endorphin boost and an oxytocin boost, both at the same time, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And here's another very good question here from Preeti Reed. How to motivate your partner or spouse for exercising, and also how is yoga practice equivalent to or as good as routine exercise?
Well, some of the studies have shown that yoga has beneficial effects on cognition and brain functioning and other physical benefits, but they're not as great as an aerobic exercise. But obviously, the two are complementary, can be complementary. And then the spouse, I don't know, because I actually have a number of friends who have this issue where they're really devoted to a workout regimen and their spouses are not, and it's an issue. And I don't really know what the solution is, because they can get quite polarized on that.
Yeah, I have a few ideas. One, I think, is to be open to exploring with a partner things that they might enjoy doing, so that you could do at least some of them together. Often, I think when you're trying to find new activities, including exercise, you really need to look at it as a process of experimentation. And if you could be doing it with somebody else, you could both be experimenting together, open to different things, trying different kinds of experiences. And at least by exploring different kinds of things together, you may find that you're able to both enjoy certain kinds of exercise together. I don't think it's critical that you actually do the exercise always together. Susan and I did used to run, and then she got out way ahead of me. And so we go to races and things like that. She finishes ahead of me, but we are able to enjoy the event together. But I do think a kind of an openness to experience and a willingness to go with one's partner's thoughts and ideas about what might be fun, especially if you can get your partner on board with the idea of doing something active, and of course trying to make it fun, trying to build the fun either into the activity itself or immediately after. Those would be the things that most immediately come to mind for me.
Are there other questions? We can go a few minutes beyond 1 o'clock if there are other questions or thoughts. All of you would have some experience of your own, and please feel free to share with the group about the potential benefits as well as how to engage better in exercise and other physical activities. So let me say a little bit about my own thoughts on exercise, Kim and Susan, and maybe you can comment on those. It appears to me that the key, the elements of exercise and related healthful activities are probably fivefold. One is, of course, you have to get your coordination of your body to be better. And two, you need to have that aerobic exercise to get your cardiovascular and lung fitness. And you need to intersperse exercise activities with some rest in between. That's what is often called interval exercises. And then breathing and building some mindfulness into that breathing would be the fourth one. And the fifth one would be strength. Building the muscles as well is as important as building the joints and the and the heart and lungs. So I tell myself this mnemonic of carbs, which is coordination, aerobics, rest activities, breathing, and strength. So, all 5 elements combined will make it a good exercise. So that's my 2 cents. So, I'm sure you have a lot to add to that.
Great.
Yes. Sometimes what people do is they seek to get all of those elements together in 2 exercises. So for example, cross training is thought to be very good, where you spend some of your time cycling, which is very good cardiovascularly. But then you spend other time running, which may be better in terms of the weight bearing. Some people will lift weights a few times a week and do aerobic exercises in between. So I think that you did really identify many of the core components of exercise, Kesh, and to think in terms of trying to get some of each of them into one's regular routine.
Yeah, thank you, Kim and Susan. So the way I figured it out as a way for my own, each of us will come up with our own routines. There is a particular kind of yoga exercise called the 12-step Sun Salutation. So Sun Salutation involves, stretching your body to backwards first, and then bringing your hands down to the floor, and then go on to a horizontal pose, and then to a cobra pose, and then back to your dog pose and stand up again. And all of those synchronized with your breathing. And so I do 10 of those, and then do some jumping jacks in between, and then take a few minutes of rest, and I go back a few sun salutations, and then the jumping jacks. So that it covers all 5 elements of carbs I just talked about. That's one way.
That's great.
And how long do you do that for?
Everything combined is about 20 minutes a day.
Wow.
So that works out to be 140 minutes in a week. I'm just about scraping the recommendation of 150 minutes.
Yeah.
But that's not enough.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys do a lot more than that, but I'm a couch potato most of the time.
Depends on the week.
Right.
So yeah, I don't see any other questions unless anyone wants to kind of raise their hands or speak up. Feel free to do so. You can unmute yourself if you want to speak. If not, let me thank both of you, Kim and Susan, for a wonderful, educative, insightful presentation. Hope to hear more of this. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.